Steve, if you would go ahead and hit the button and start that recording now, that would be absolutely terrific. If you haven't already, it looks like we've got it going there. Great. The link to the advanced packet was sent out in an email by Mr. Herman on Monday, so we're assuming that most of you will have access to that, and we won't be bringing up each of the items on screen. If there's anything that you can't find in that packet, or if you would like us to take a moment and bring up on screen, please ask the question either live or through the chat, and we'll do so. We do have about half a dozen action items spread out throughout the agenda and a few more informational items than usual. So we are shooting for probably a 2-hour meeting today. We will provide a 10-minute recess at or around the 1-hour mark, and we'll move through our items as quickly as possible. Just general points. Again, we ask that you mute your microphones when they're not in use, and we ask that that you introduce yourself when giving a motion, a second, or when asking a question. Okay, with that out of the way, I would ask if there are any people attending the meeting for the purpose of providing comment on an item not listed in the agenda.
Jim, this is Steve. I would just ask maybe for Kay's benefit for doing the minutes, if we could do a quick rundown of who's on the call. I think she was maybe just calling in, not hitting the visual aspect of this.
Okay, Kay, from that standpoint, what's the easiest way? Do you want to do a roll call? Do you have access to the screen, Kay, or no? I guess that's what Steve was just saying, that you can't see who's logged in, correct?
No, I'm using my office phone. I'm not logged in by my computer.
All right, so do you need us to do a just a listing of who's on, going from the attendance, or do you want me to cut and paste that and send it to you afterwards?
You can send it to me afterwards so we don't, waste time doing that, okay?
That works fine for me as long as it gets you the information that you need. Is that acceptable to all the members, or is there anyone that would like us to do a listing of who's on the call verbally first? All right, then hearing none, we're going to go ahead and storm forward. So hearing no comments about the agenda, then that brings us up to item C, the approval of the October 9th, 2020 MPO minutes. Are there any comments or corrections to the minutes as they were presented in the packet that was sent out prior to the meeting? If there are no comments, then do we have a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
John Delvecchio,
Greg Moulton, Montour County. Move to approve.
John, can we take you as the second on that then? Okay, with the motion coming from Greg and the second coming from John Delvecchio, are there any further comments or questions? Hearing none, then all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any abstentions? And are there any people that, anyone wishing to signify that they do not agree with adopting the minutes as presented, please signify by saying nay at this time. All right, then the minutes are accepted unanimously as presented. Sorry, it is stumbling all over my words this morning. That brings us up to item D, the TIP administrative modifications and amendments. Again, this has been a little bit harder for us in the virtual format. We've been trying to summarize these just to give you an overview of what's happening with these changes if you haven't had the chance to review it closely. So we're going to continue that today. If that is something that you'd like us to change going forward, if there's a better way to do it, we're certainly open to comment. So the changes, the administrative actions start on page 9 with the changes from District 2. The first action had some projects where the costs came in under estimates, and the change is just moving that money back into the reserve line item. The section action is adding money from the statewide railroad program to cover cost increases on a couple of rail crossing safety improvements. The third item moves the ARC access road project in Mifflin County from the old tip forward to the current tip. And likewise, the fourth action moves the PE phase for the project shown there on 120 to the current tip. And it also adds some additional money to coordinate with Norfolk Southern. What they called out in the comment was for the flagging that would be required and for a plans review. And then the last item shown for District 2 pulls some money out of reserve to address a small overrun in the utility phase for the SR 35 bridge there in Juniata County. With that very brief overview, are there any detailed questions for Vicki on the actions presented? All right, then hearing none, do we have a
Jim,
motion?
This is
Yep.
Gary. Just before, I just want to give Brad a heads up that the Juniata, I think it's the Willow Run Bridge. We put that on the tip just yesterday. It's not showing on the actions. Also, there's a project in Union County using Act 13 bridge funds. I can't remember the name, Jim, of the project. T366, I think, or 633.
87, do we have that right, John?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't got that in front of me. I'll have to go look here real quick.
Okay. But that, both those are Act 13 bridges that the respective counties asked to have added to the tip, and we were able to move both those changes through for this meeting. So a tip of the hat to the districts and also to the county planners for getting us that information and keeping that process rolling along. All right. Any other questions related to the administrative actions for District 2? All right, then hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the actions as presented?
Jim, it's Brad Kerstetter. I'll make that motion.
Brad, thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
This is Gary. I'll second.
Gary, thank you for the second. Any further discussion? Then hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the administrative actions for District 2 as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 If there are any opposed, please signify by saying nay at this time. And are there any abstentions? All right, hearing none, then the administrative actions are accepted as presented. The actions for District 3 cover 19 actions on 30 projects. So starting on the next page, in this case, we're really just going to skim over the top and we're going to leave it to you to ask any detailed questions. Over half these changes are cost recovery changes. They pull funds out of 15 projects where it wasn't needed and pull that funding back into the reserve line item for the district. So these are cases where we had a utility phase programmed on a bridge just in case and later found that it wasn't needed. In some cases, the bids came in lower than the estimate. And in other cases, John was able to ask for advanced construction conversions from the funding from the old tip. And all told, this brings almost $10 million back into the current tip that we can allocate to other projects. There are also a couple of changes in the other direction, either pulling phases from the old tip forward to the new tip or covering cost overruns. And then there were a couple changes that are shown with a total of $0. I know that that's always a little confusing for me when I see that. What's happening there is typically we're changing the funding flavor. Some of our funding programs are only able to be used on particular assets or particular roadways. So if you've got something like the Federal Bridge on Federal System program or the NHPP program, it's tied to certain roadways. And sometimes what we're doing is we're putting more of that funding in projects that qualify so that we can pull the more flexible streams of funding out of that and use them on other projects. Then a couple of highlights of just things that didn't fit into any of those bins. We did remove Norfolk Southern Railroad Crossing Safety Project on page 13. To kind of balance that out, there's another Norfolk Southern Railroad Crossing project on page 15 where we're adding about $60,000. Another highlight on page 15, we saw that the Bloomsburg Transportation Alternative Set-Aside project received some additional funds from the statewide line item to come in a bid that came in a little bit higher than expected. And at the bottom of that, we're continuing to put a little bit of funding into a stormwater monitoring contract at District 3. At the very last item, we're adding federal and state flood mitigation funds for permanent repairs to SR 1022 in Fishing Creek Township, Columbia County to the tip. So I realize that's covering an awful lot of territory. We just wanted to provide a really gross summary to the members so you have an idea of what's going on. Are there any particular questions for John Rank about any of those changes at the detail level?
John, I have a question. The Union County items on page 11, the $949,500. Just can you clarify, just to make sure I'm on the right page as to what's happening there?
Down here, let me take a look at this here.
Sure. I'm sure it's clear. I just don't remember.
So on the beginning part of the page, with those utility phases, what we do is we program projects. We kind of blank.
No, that I understand.
Okay, that one's good on.
The next two.
Okay, the local bridge for Union County. That's basically I'm adjusting the funding to where the needs are at the time. What happens is it's tough to explain authority and conversions where I could kind of explain it to a level, but kind of the simple thing is if I have program funds on a previous tip that get converted, I only have to account for on the new tip for what hasn't been converted. So if we have more funding there than what is needed to convert to regular funding,
okay.
And I know this is kind of tough to understand, then we only have to keep what is needed to convert what has not been converted yet, what they call as AC funds. So what I'm doing is adjusting the program amount on the tip for these projects to the amount needed just for the remaining amount that needs to be converted.
Okay, I understand that. Fine, thank you.
And do you have any questions on the bottom one there? I think again, I'm just adjusting to, yeah, that's 11, that's the 11, mainly the 11 project and 47 project in Bloomsbury. Again, it's the same thing. I'm adjusting to what the needs are for the federal amounts.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and to go on, the Union County Bridge that for Act 13 was T347 over the North Branch of Buffalo Creek. It's County Bridge number 15. And the only thing else I'll bring up is if probably most of you know who live around the Norrie and Danville area is Route 11 had a significant slide about 2 miles west of Danville. We have a forced account contractor out there right now. I can't tell you when it's going to be completely reopened again, just because there's a lot of debris there, significant debris as far as rocks and boulders, and we're not sure we need to really see what's going on with the slide, the embankment that slid. So between that, I can't tell you when it's going to be ready to go, but we are out there and we're trying to get it at least open, and then plan to have another project later that will then address the needed repairs, to get it back to where it was. And that's all I got.
Is that the same place where we had already been looking or working on a slide, or is that further up or down Route 11 from that?
I would have to go back and look, Jim, but I think it is roughly the same place. I went back and looked, and it looks like we checked it out before here and there, but it wasn't moving. Well, I guess after these rain events that we had, it decided to move so significantly. So we're again reacting to it, and hopefully we'll have that roadway open again within a few days, hopefully not more than weeks.
That's a big one. Thank you. Any other questions for John? All right, then hearing none, is there a motion to approve the administrative actions for District 3 as presented?
This is Eric Staley. I'll make that motion.
Eric, thanks for the motion. Do we have a second?
Greg Moulter, I'll second it.
Greg, thanks for the second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor of accepting the administrative actions as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 If there are any opposed, please signify by saying nay. And are there any abstentions? Then hearing none, the administrative actions are accepted as presented. Thank you. And thanks for the questions. It's that kind of conversation is part of what we're trying to provide here. So working forward through the packet, page 17 is the list of projects that we voted to approve that we haven't yet found the funds to program. There are no changes to this list since the last meeting. I'd note that 2 of those are ARC local access roads. This is the meeting of the year where we would typically ask you to vote to approve any new candidates and add them to this list. In this past year, we haven't had any candidates proposed in this region or in the MPO region. I'm aware there is one moving forward in Lycoming County. And I guess the action item there is that if you're working with a developer or with a business that sounds like a good client for the project, for the program, please make sure to have them reach out and contact Betsy Lockwood and our staff, ideally by March of this year, so that we're queuing them up for the June meeting in that first level overview that we give those projects. We've had a lot of good projects come through the region under that program, and I hate to leave it sit idle. Starting on page 18 is our first simplified tip listing for the new tip. And again, if you've been coming to the MPO meetings long enough, you remember that when we share a tip listing, it's usually an 11 by 17 table. Each project will have multiple lines. Each phase is shown in a separate line, and all the different funding amounts are included in that. This simplified listing is just an effort to cut it down to something you can easily understand and talk about. It's an effort to give you a one-line summary of each project, so that if someone asks you, well, what does our county actually have on the tip, you can go right down this list with them. This is the first time we've updated it since bringing the new tip in, and we'll plan to continue to update this listing and share it with you every 2 or 3 MPO meetings. And a tip of the hat to Catherine, because I know it takes a ton of work to pull the tip report out of the PennDOT MPMS database and then reformat it and kind of, repackage this into something that you can explain over a cup of coffee to somebody. Are there any other questions under item D? Okay, then hearing none, John, I think that cues us up to have you give us an update on the CSVT project.
Okay, Jim. Starting with the northern construction area, starting with the river bridge. There's some final details to be done to the bridge, like expansion dam work and bridge railing. Underneath it, we're removing the causeway and we're constructing the boat launch. And this should be all done by the end of the year. And then I think with the bridge, it's just, again, some just minor details into next year, and then the bridge should be completed. The paving, remaining activities for this year, some traffic signal construction, and install some sign structures, for 2021, complete concrete and first layer of asphalt paving from Ridge Road to the Winfield interchange, and convert the E&S measures from temporary to the permanent stormwater management features. And then in 2022, pave final asphalt wearing course, install guide rail lights and signs, construct the southbound lanes from Route 405 north to the existing 4 lanes, realign Route 405 intersection with Route 147, and then open the northern section. Any questions on the northern section?
Are you shooting at an actual opening date yet?
They haven't given me one, so I'm still saying 2022. Hopefully early 2022, in the construction season of 2022.
That's all right. It's been a long time coming. We'll be thrilled to see it open.
For the
Any
southern sec, oh,
Go ahead.
go ahead, Jim. Anything else?
No.
Okay. For the southern section, I really don't have any update from last time. Everything is still going on as it is. The only thing that we're putting out there is we'll be sending invitations this week for a virtual meeting in early December with local officials and emergency responders. The purpose of this meeting is to follow up on feedback that the group provided last year. For example, we will review some measures we plan to accommodate school buses while detours are required during construction, as well as some adjustments we made to our planned construction access in some areas. And that is all I have for the southern section. Any questions?
All right, then hearing none, that's going to bring us on to item F. John, thank you for that update in CSVT.
Thank you.
All right. Item F is the 2021 meeting dates. They're shown on page 33. We shared this set of dates with the group at the last meeting. We asked you to let us know if there were any known conflicts or anything we'd really have to schedule around. Since the last meeting, we haven't heard about anything we'd have to schedule around. And we've had comments from a couple of people that those dates work. So hearing no opposition, we're going to go ahead and move forward and schedule the dates listed there. And again, just noting that we've kind of front loaded that. We've got 4 in the first half of the year to get us through the adoption process for the long range transportation plan. And we do run a little bit light there in the second half of the year than we have typically. It's not too much different. Any questions on those? All right, then that brings us up to item G, the election of MPO officers and member reappointments. Page 34 in the packet shows the members whose terms are expiring at the end of the year. So after this meeting, we'll send out a letter to your counties asking them to reappoint you. This is just a heads up so that you know that the letter is coming and it doesn't take you by surprise. And again, if there are any questions about that or any issues with the package that comes out, just get in contact with us. We try to make that as painless as possible. This is also the last meeting of the calendar year. By tradition, SEDA-COG staff and the PennDOT CPDM liaison serve as the chair and vice chair, but the way we have it written in the bylaws is that if the members of the MPOs would like to have an election, this is the meeting where we would take that up. So I just want to make sure I put it out in front of the members. If you've been thinking about this and thinking this is the year that you want to see that changed or you want to become an officer, this would be the time to make a motion. All right, then hearing none, we're going to move on to item H, the UPWP update. The staff activity report starts on page 37. This is a list of the meetings and the other projects we've been working on since the October 9th meeting. Just a couple of highlights that I wanted to call out. Catherine presented at the last meeting on the HPMS data collection effort, and I just wanted to note that she's been just working days on that, and she's on track to complete that inventory by the December deadline. So we're really happy to see that moving through. Some coming attractions for this section at a future meeting. Vicki Rusnak has asked us about the idea of sitting down with each of our county planners in District 2 to talk about the retroactive reimbursement program, just to make sure that everybody is on the same page with that. On the staff side, we think that that's an outstanding idea. So look for a doodle poll to come out from us coming out of this meeting. What we'd be talking about is just making sure that we're giving you feedback at the county level if you've put candidates forward for that previously, making sure that you've heard back from us on whether that's a good fit for the program or not. And then just a conversation, make sure we're all on the same page about what projects are out there, what's eligible, and what we should be programming next. Page 41 is just a quick summary of the meetings related to TIP projects. I know Katie wasn't able to be on the meeting today. I guess one of the moving items there is the bundle project that we've been working with District 3 on to remove the bridges that have been closed for more than 4 years. That project is moving along. Most of the municipalities where those bridges are located got a letter in the last few weeks talking about whether it will need to dedicate right-of-way as part of that process. The T537 bridge in Clinton County is a little bit different, since the township that owns the bridge has expressed some interest in getting the bridge open back up to traffic. So we're looking for a meeting to be scheduled on that. And then page 42, just the list of projects we've been coordinating on. We added the Scrubby Hill Road over in Snyder County, but we haven't gotten to adding the Perkerson Road Bridge, I think in Penn Township, to that listing yet. So just acknowledging that that's moving forward. Steve, would you like to pick it up here for an update on the transportation alternative set-aside projects?
Sure, thanks, Jim. Here now in the packet, we're on to page 43. And for those of you that may have printed it and are using that way, or received it in the mail, we did take the step to make sure these match now. So if you have the PDF viewer in front of you using that reader, we're on page 43, and then the bottom right of the printed copies has in bold what page number we're on. So this is 43 of 94. It's our normal regular reporting we do on the transportation alternatives projects. And Jim touched on earlier the first item there, the pedestrian improvements throughout 1147 corridor in the town of Bloomsburg. As Chris King mentioned at the last meeting, there was a little cost increase there, and they were able to secure additional funds with the district and the sponsor of the town from the statewide line item for the set-aside program. So that was received, and the project, then the notice to proceed was given since our last meeting in October, so October 28th. And hopefully, I guess, early next construction season, that'll be getting well underway in conjunction with the resurfacing reconstruction project. Any other comments from either John or Lisa on that project before we continue?
I do not have any other comments. I know staff will be working with the project lead to find out some more additional information on timing. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. And yeah, good progress being made there. And we certainly like to see those types of initiatives where you can combine, local bicycle pedestrian or safety accommodations into a planned resurfacing or reconstruction project. So good coordination there with all the parties. Scrolling down that list, nothing new to report from our end or what we've downloaded from the PennDOT databases. We do show then in bold on page 44 that the Clinton County Rail Trail, more currently known as the Bald Eagle Valley Rail Trail, that project was let in October on the 22nd since we last met, and I think they are pleased with where the bids came in. And I think it's a very credentialed contractor that they're looking to award that to. I don't think the notice to proceed was given yet, but I also think that low bidder was able to give them some cost savings with some of the techniques that they were offering there. But so that's good reporting on that for the Bald Eagle Valley Rail Trail moving forward, and hopefully notice to proceed. We'll have that noted for our next meeting, and that'll be hopefully getting underway for next construction season as well. Also in bold on the bottom of that page 44, you'll see the Brown Township Streetscape Project in Reedsville area, Mifflin County. A little bit of delays with some of the right-of-way clearing process there, but I think the estimate now is was earlier this month for the funds to be obligated for that project to be advertised, and then a letting in December. So I'll open it up to Vicki or Dean. Is there any update on the Brown Township project from your end as well?
I can say no, it is advertised for a let on 12/10.
Great, thank you, Dean. And for those of you that haven't met or worked with Dean in the past, he has replaced Tom Zarat as the Assistant District Executive for Design at District 2. So we're glad to have you as part of this virtual meeting here today, and look forward to future coordination with you, Dean. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
So that was the update that we had from the currently approved and active transportation alternatives projects. I will note then on the plan and workflow for the next round, we've been involved in a work group to test out the new, improved, enhanced application process. And so we're working out through some of the kinks and giving them some recommendations to the consultant team and PennDOT Central Office on that. And hopefully that'll be a better experience for all the applicants and sponsors. And it will then link in the environmental scoring and some of the things that you would see through the PennDOT Connects process. And the Connects will still be a requirement to have that kind of outreach done and meetings with the local officials and the district staff to identify any issues up front before applying. And so yeah, that'll continue to happen here in November, probably early December, and get that application process refined. And then we'll wait more details on some of the budget information and federal legislation. But hopefully sometime next year we'll see another round opening for soliciting transportation alternatives projects through the set-aside program. So if you're working with communities, or they have some ideas, or maybe they're looking to target some funds or do some upfront planning and design work, I encourage that to continue, and hopefully we'll have a round open up in 2021 sometime. Any other comments or questions about the alternatives program? If not, I can take then the next item in this section, Jim. It's page 45 for the MPO strategic plan. Those of you who were involved last time recall that this plan was adopted in March of 2019. And one of the things that consultant from Gannett Fleming helped us with is better reporting and tracking the activity related to the strategic plan, and how the staff, board members, and local governments are making progress on the action items. So we've followed through on that and doing quarterly reporting, and also an annual implementation progress tracker. So page 45 is just that kind of overview introduction to what it's about. And then we get in on page 46 with actual listings and activities of note related to those primary actions included in the strategic plan. I'll just note briefly, a lot of these are kind of geared toward funding, project development activities, working with local municipalities and sponsors, and then also related to performance measures as we further move the ball on that, and hopefully for the long range plan and tip development, making that more clear and transparent for the members and also for the public, and how we're tracking our progress on transportation improvements included in those plans. And also on act note for multimodal and modernization. For multimodal, the Middle Susquehanna Active Transportation Committee was the main thing there, and that group was established in 2019 and has been doing a lot of great work spearheading that and relying on some various work groups. So we've been noting some of those activities and what the group's working on there, and we've been hitting those in our newsletter as well that we send out through the MPO. And then through corridor modernization with the long range plan, starting to identify areas of concern related to congestion and how we can hopefully optimize flows through those areas. And that'll be some of the coverage in the long range plan update, and working with the consultant team on how we analyze and better report on those. So those are some of the highlights I just wanted to touch on briefly from that core of the reporting, and then open up to any questions or comments, or if any of the board members have things that they want us to link up and integrate into this reporting, or to support you in your efforts, feel free to share those now or follow up with us afterward. Questions, comments on the strategic plan or the activity review?
All right, hearing none. Catherine, I know we've got you in for a full update further down the agenda, but do you want to spend just a couple of minutes talking about the bike safety decal, since we've got a highlight of that there on page 49?
Sure. So like Jim said, on page 49, there is a clear photo up at the top of the decals that we've brought up a few times. We received a grant. Well, the Susquehanna Greenway Partnership technically received it, and we worked with the Active Transportation Group to design this new decal that's on the right over here with it's Pennsylvania law and give bikes 4 feet. So those have come in, and are being distributed all over the place. We found out yesterday that some areas in Lancaster are also asking for the decals and items like that. So if you are interested in receiving any of those, please let me know and we can certainly facilitate that.
Okay, then that brings us up to, if there are no questions, that brings us up to item I, the long-range transportation plan update. Mr. Keel, would you take us through that?
Okay, good morning, everybody. If someone would let me know if you can see the live screen here for the title slide for the presentation.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, great, thank you. I know last time when I gave a presentation, there was a little problem with the sound and breakup due to, I think, bandwidth here at my house, but hopefully everything will be okay today. But if that turns out to be the case, please let me know and I'll try to see if there's anything that can be done about it. I did want to mention that there are a couple updates on the slides. There's not that many slides this time, but I made a couple of last minute updates to the slides that did not make it in the packet, just so that you know, So if you want to follow along, if you can see this visually, that will be helpful. But if not, the changes aren't that significant, but I'll try to highlight a couple of those. Okay, here's the project schedule again, and I just put this in here one more time to show where we are in the context of the overall project. And again, we've had some shuffling to do for a variety of reasons. We're still on track to complete the project when the end of June comes next year. And I'll give you some updates on where we are with some of the various steps here. A lot of work is going on right at this time. And by the time that the next MPO meeting happens after the first of the year, we should have a whole lot more to report on and some pretty interesting and useful things to be able to show you, maybe even online. Oops, sorry for the jumping. The one thing I wanted to start with is that we will be sending out to you a link here shortly through the email to have you do a first review of the LRTP report. It's the draft version of the report. And we want to call this sort of the fatal flaw review. The main idea is to try to give you ample time during the life of this process for the development of this plan document to do reviews at different points so that we're not missing anything significant. That's the main thrust of the initial review here. Are we missing anything? The overall big picture. Is there something that you think ought to be included in the report that's not in there, particularly in the current conditions part, because that's where we are in the process right now. There's missing pieces, there's some gaps, there's some internal comments that we've got in yellow highlighting, for example. It's really very much a first draft. And we realize that there are things that are missing and things that are in process of being put together. But the main idea is to get feedback from you right now, not in a detailed manner, not to read the whole document from front to back, but see if we're missing anything significant. That's what we're interested in finding out about. So a couple of notes about the document when you get it. It'll be posted online. We'll give you instructions in an email about how to download it. It's a large document, number of pages so far, and in the size of the file. We may put out a couple of different versions of it where we can slim down the size of it, even if maybe some of the graphics are a little bit jagged or fuzzy if you want to look at a smaller version of that. But we'll do that shortly here. Note that the formatting is incomplete. I think we have a reasonable accounting of tables and figures with numbers, but there's nothing like table of contents in there yet. There's a lot of things that will be cleaned up for later versions of things. So please excuse us at this point for the way it looks right there. The main aspect that's been covered a lot are the current conditions sections. And we've got some that we're working on still that need to be completed. Probably the most significant work right now is going on to identify as Steve mentioned, corridors of concern. We are looking at congestion, resiliency and flooding conditions, freight generation, crashes and safety information. Michael Baker is working with us. I know Brian Funkhauser is on the call today, but they're working with us on helping to gather that information, put it together in a form where we can do some integrated analysis with it. They're making good progress on that. I think by the time the district strategy days take place, we'll have a little bit more to show at least those groups. That is the key part of the current conditions, to allow us to analyze what's going on out on the transportation network and how does that relate to projects that have been identified so far, or maybe new projects that might need to be added. The plan will include further discussion of performance measures. We have some information in there right now about that, but that in turn will tie back to some of the analysis that still needs to be going on. You'll see in the document there are places where we have placeholders in there for maps or tables where things need to be updated or completed. So we want to make sure that we had some information in there of what some of those might look like, even if we don't have the updated or current information to show there. I mentioned the yellow highlights. Those are mainly internal comments for us to address. So there may be a comment in there from myself to Jim or Steve, or other places that we want to note we're missing a piece and we don't want to overlook that. So they're placeholders for comments there right now. I've mentioned before, one of the challenges is looking at shifting targets right now related to COVID, related to funding. We're trying to keep up to date with that on new developments that are happening even as we speak. And we'll have to have a cutoff on that at some point, seeing how things go between now and mid-2021. But there are some significant areas in there where we do talk about what we know and what we understand right now and how that might affect transportation projects and funding. The second and major part of the document is the plan implementation. And that's largely incomplete yet, because that's where we really get into the meat and potatoes of taking the projects that have been proposed and identified so far and putting that in a game plan of scheduling and possibilities and what gets prioritized and so on. So that will be one of the main areas we look at over the next few weeks and months in putting together the actual action plan for projects. So what we would like to suggest is in the email that will go out again, we realize how busy things are with the upcoming holidays and other things here in the next couple of weeks. But again, keep in mind, we're not asking for a detailed review from you of the document as much as looking at the big picture of what's included and maybe whether there's some things that we still need to include or have overlooked at this point. So we'd like to give you 2 weeks for any review comments that you might have to get back to me. That would be Friday, December 4th. That will pretty much set as the deadline. So expect to see that shortly. Hopefully you can get access to the appropriate site to download the document. If you have trouble doing that, please let us know and we'll be glad to support you and see if there's an alternate way to get that to you if needed. Any comments on that at this point? Okay. I won't spend much time on discussing the project lists here, except to make a couple of comments. I appreciate everyone's input on the discretionary project list. This is the first cut review list that you have provided feedback and input. We've updated the overall project list for the entire MPO and added your comments in there, identified which entity has provided the comments or identified those as priority projects. I do want to apologize to John Delvecchio and Union. When the packet went out, we had not included the Union County projects in the overall list. They are in there now, and that makes a list of 72 projects that we're looking at as potentials right now. So when I send out the instructions for downloading the report document, we'll probably send out the updated list of discretionary projects. One thing that we'll be focusing on when we have district strategy days coming up here shortly is the asset management project list. That currently has 29 projects on the list. This is the larger set of larger projects for the most part that we'll be talking about in more detail to District 2 and District 3 shortly. So that's not the project list that we asked counties and other stakeholders, jurisdictions to review, but that is going to be the subject of discussion here over the next couple of weeks. Another area where Michael Baker is really helping us that ties back into the report analysis steps is the public input approach. Over the last month, we've been further defining how that will work. This is a challenge to us this time because we can't go out and have regular, typical public meetings like we've had before because of the COVID situation. So we've been discussing how this should look. The approach is going to be building on SEDA-COG's existing transportation website, where we'll be providing additional pages and links. We're hoping to have interactive GIS maps that people can look at, or at least a good series of mapping of some variety for reviewing essentially the existing projects. The main idea is not to collect information for other projects or new projects, but to review the existing projects list. That's where we want to see the emphasis in doing this. There will be a survey or comment section for the general public to provide input. There's some models that Michael Baker has been working on, both with the site design for this kind of information collection and presentation. So it's not starting from square one. There are some things that we can build upon with that. Our goal is to go live with this in mid-January. We hope to be able to provide some prior review by the MPO board and steering committee. We may send out a link again here in the next several weeks before mid-January to let everybody have a look at it and see if you have any feedback or comments for us. So Michael Baker is helping quite a bit on putting together the design and the approach. We're making good progress on it. And I also want to say too that building the mapping and building the information that we're going to present to the public through this website is going hand in hand with a couple of things. First of all, it's going to allow us to do our analysis independent of the website. I'm looking at corridors of concern and other information. That type of thing is being included in the GIS analysis aspect of things. And we hope it'll also result in us being able to continue to use that kind of tool even after the LRTP is finished, that we could continue to keep it updated and provide current information after the process is done. So we want to be able to use this in multiple ways. The last thing is the district strategy days. District 3 is scheduled for December 1st, about half a day. Same thing with District 2 on December 8th. I mentioned we want to mostly review the asset management projects list, but there will be additional things we'll talk about from what happened from 2015, the input, looking at the major projects pulled from the 12-year plan, what regional opportunities or coordination might be necessary across boundaries between the two districts. There's been new information presented about the bridge and pavement asset management systems from the planning partners meeting on November 4th. There will be further discussion about that, I'm sure, at these meetings. And potentially, if we have time and there's interest in actually touching on the discretionary projects list, we'll be able to do that, we hope, if there's interest and there's time in being able to do that. So the next time we meet and talk, we'll have a report from the districts in those meetings, since they take place here coming up very shortly. So that's what I wanted to present today, and leave it at that unless anyone has any comments or questions on any aspect of it.
Hey, Don, this is Mark in Mifflin. Just a minor thing, but I noticed on your time frame, you put a tentative time frame to adopt the plan for June the 18th. It looks based on the tentative meeting schedule that it should be the 25th. So that might be something you might want to tweak.
Yeah, I know we've changed that too, Mark. So I appreciate you pointing that out if that's not been updated.
And then just a clarification question, really. I know you were handling the rail projects and active transportation projects separately from the discretionary list. And I just didn't know, since you included the discretionary list in this presentation, are you going to have that as a separate table? Because I know in particular, there's one of the active transportation projects that I provided to you that has roadway impacts. So I didn't know how you were going to handle that in the final document.
Well, I know on the current list, there are some of both that are rail oriented or related to active transportation projects, because that's where the source was to put some of those on the list. If we're missing some things or we have overlooked a couple of things that maybe should be on there, at this point, they don't have to be something which has a definite effect on the roadway network. But if there's anything, again, that we're missing or we've not added to the list that should be on there, it's still very much open for making sure that's included at this point.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you very much, and look for some follow-up from us then shortly.
Okay, then Steve, would you be willing to walk us through the annual listing of obligated projects? Steve, did we catch you by surprise there?
I was on mute, sorry. Hit the proper button, had a couple windows open and was covering over the Ring Central meeting window. So thank you, Jim. Let me get to the right page here within the packet and cover the obligated projects reporting. Okay, this is agenda item J, which begins on page 72. And essentially what this boils down to is the annual list of obligated project reports the requirement of current federal transportation law for the MPOs to prepare and publicize an annual listing of obligated projects during the federal fiscal year, which starts on October 1st and concludes on September 30th. We prepared this report starting on page 72 of the packet for the federal fiscal year 2020 project obligations with federal funds. The listing that starts on page 77 is based on a download of the Federal Highway Administration Obligation Report from PennDOT's Multimodal Project Management System for fiscal year 2020. And for the purpose of the listing that we have in here, it only shows obligations. So sometimes there's de-obligations where funds are removed from a project due to cost savings or other transfers that occur. We don't show those de-obligations. It's just the project with federal funding that was obligated. So for federal fiscal year 2020, the SEDA-COG 8-county MPO area saw a total of 91 obligations, and that's for all phases, whether it was a study phase, preliminary engineering, final design, utility, right of way, or construction. So all those phases broken down, there were 91 obligations for them, and it was worth a project funding total of $38.3 million approximately. So you'll see there in the report listing we show it by the funding categories as well. So the highest federal funding category was the NHPP, or the National Highway Performance Program, and we saw about $14 million, or 37% of the total federal funding obligated for projects using those funds. And the next highest was the Surface Transportation Program, or STP program, and that was coming in at 11 million, or about 29% of the overall. And you'll see listed in the report, we have descriptions of those categories and eligible uses of what they would apply toward. And we also list there in bold on page 74 that PennDOT serves as the project administrator, responsible for carrying out the project or phase for all the projects in the tables, with the exception of the MPMS number 7498, and that's the Township 309 bridge over Penns Creek, which is actually administered by Union County and Hartley Township. So we did show all those administrators in the actual tabular listing, just because that was the only case where it wasn't PennDOT. So we noted that there on page 74. And we also detail some more definitions, some codes or acronyms, and then for your actual table listing, what's represented by those road headers. And the obligated is, again, the amount that was obligated using the federal funds for federal fiscal year 2020, which was October 1st of 2019 through September 30th of this year, 2020. We have some other abbreviations there, just where a couple of those are used for shortenings within the project titles. And we have a snapshot from one map, which we heard a presentation on last meeting from PennDOT on with Brandon Leach. So we plugged in all those MPMS numbers into one map and just generated that quick map. You can see how it's represented across the region. Sorry for the resolution there. It gets a little fuzzy in some locales, but that's our snapshot from one map for those that were mappable. Sometimes there's projects that are on the local system that don't appear there just because it's not currently in the mapping databases, but that represents vast majority. And the table listing starts then on page 77, and we have these organized in ascending order by the MPMS number and county. So that shows all the basic details for each project. Through one map, you could go ahead and plug in those MPMS numbers and find out more details if you would like to investigate or look into that further. And toward the end, the very last page, there were not any federal funds obligated for transit projects and what PennDOT provided. And we weren't aware of any other sources like the urbanized area 5307 funds, and we checked with the transit agencies and have not learned of any. So we just have that notation that there were no federal funded transit grants awarded in the fiscal year 2019 to 20 for any transit agencies operating in the 8-county MPO region. So a lot of the format is the same as what you've seen in the last 2 years. But last year we had taken the step of putting out a social media post about this report and ensuring that it was publicized on our website. That was one of the things that was found in a prior tip finding and evaluation Federal Highway Administration, that some of these reports were not getting out there and fulfilling that consistency with the requirement for being publicized or published, so the public could go in and take a look at this report and the listing. So that'll again be hit on our website, and we'll get a social media post out to promoting it. But essentially, we're treating this as an informational item, and then just wanted to toss it out there and see if members had any comments, questions, or if there's things you want to recommend maybe enhancing for future iterations, or to revise this current report, because we have until the end of December to meet the requirement for it being published on our website. So I'll toss it out there for any comments, questions, or proposed improvements. If there aren't any, we'll go ahead and get this published and up on the SEDA-COG website for next week in our resource page there, and we'll meet that federal requirement. And if you do have anything that you get a trigger that there's something you'd like to see changed and modified in the future, just let us know anytime.
All right, so with that, we are at almost exactly an hour in. We are running a little bit ahead of schedule on the agenda, but we've got 3 items left to go. So I think at the staff level, our recommendation would be that we go ahead and we take the 10-minute break that we promised here. We'll put a timer up on the screen. This is a moment if you need to step away from the computer, if you need to get a warm up, please do so. And then we will come back in and pick up with item K, the annual update of safety performance projects at about 10:42, 10:43 a.m. So thank you.
Hey, Jim,
Yes, sir.
you want to know how far you've come in SEDA-COG over the past several years? Found this in our archives for you.
Uh-oh. Oh, yeah.
1976. You got a 150 odd pages of progress from then. There you go. Got this earmarked for you. I'll drop it off when you open it up again.
Outstanding. Thank you. Yeah, we found a functional classification report from the late 1970s, and yeah, it was interesting. Some of the stuff in it was so right that it was scary.
Yep.
Some of the stuff was so wrong that it was scary. So,
My, how big you've gotten type of thing. Yes, indeed. God.
big enough.
All right, I'm gonna step away for a minute. Talk to
All right, we'll make that about the 30-second warning. Steve, if you can queue up to think about the annual update of safety performance measure targets.
Okay, I've heard the buzzer. Would you like him to begin now, Jim?
Oh, please do, Steve. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks. That was kind of a pleasant bell or sound there, not like some of those horrible alarm clocks noises or TV commercials you listen to. So thanks for that as our prompt. And so, yeah, we're continuing here on page 86. And this also continues our federal planning requirements on an annual basis. And it's the annual update of the safety performance measure targets. Now, those of you who've been around for a series of these the past couple of years will recall and MAP 21 federal transportation bill, and then subsequently in the FAST, the Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act, it included the performance measures, targets and requirements, and the safety PM1 was the first one out the gate. And so we've been tracking and working with PennDOT on that collaboratively over the past few years. And so in 2017 is when PennDOT began developing the statewide performance measure targets for safety matters criteria. And so those were for the 2018 targets, and then also 2019 and 2020. So we've worked on those each of the past 3 years, and the MPO has agreed to endorse the statewide targets for the measures that you see there in the table, and those being the number of fatalities, the fatality rate, which equates to the rate of fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, the number of serious injuries, the rate of serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, and then the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. So we've been showing this in the table there. It's off the 5-year rolling averages, just to help you get out maybe some outliers or maybe some aberrations a certain year. And so we've been tracking those on the 5-year rolling average basis. And we've had a little bit of changes in the targets, if you recall, over time. Initially, it was a 2% reduction target, annual reduction target for fatalities and serious injuries. And then last year, it was reduced to 1% because of some difficulty achieving those targets. And this year, a decision was made by PennDOT for the statewide targets to go back up to 2% reduction in fatality numbers and maintaining level serious injuries. So still, we want to try and drive down fatality numbers greater, and then obviously, in consideration of the various factors out there and realistic targets as well. That 2% is where we should be at, and that's consistent with the state's comprehensive highway safety plan and the analysis that's run out of PennDOT central office in the traffic safety section. But the serious injuries, the decision was made there for level. We've seen a rise in serious injuries due to some little bit of quirks in the reporting. What formerly wasn't considered serious injuries, now is, based on the federal databases and what needs to be submitted. And also just the severity, the crashes are maybe coming down a little bit due to less driving and the impacts of the COVID situation, but it seems that serious injuries are rising. So the decision was made there for 2% annual reduction in fatalities, but maintain levels serious injuries. And we'll note that the requirement for the MPOs is that they have to either agree to the statewide targets and to programming projects that would help to meet those within 180 days. So with PennDOT setting it to the end of August, we would have until the end of February as an MPO to make that decision. But since this is our final meeting of 2020, we'll put it out here for a recommendation at this meeting. And since at a staff level, we don't really have the technical credentials or acumen or access to the data to make a decision to go in a different route on establishing different targets, our recommendation would be to piggyback off of the statewide targets and agree to those, and to make sure that as an MPO, we're working to plan and program projects on the tip through the long-range plan and other mechanisms that contribute to meeting or making significant progress toward the established PennDOT safety targets. And that would be to reducing fatalities and serious injuries for at least 4 out of the 5 measures that you see listed there. Other notations here before we entertain questions, comments, or a motion. Federal Highway Administration does an evaluation annually on whether PennDOT's met or making significant progress toward these safety targets using those rolling 5-year averages. And it's more than likely the 2019 targets will not be met. So that then kicks in a requirement that PennDOT prepares an implementation plan and looks at gaps and strategies, action steps, and best practices, along with financial and performance review of all the HSIP funded projects to see how we can be doing things a little bit differently, or to make sure that we are driving down those numbers and meeting the targets. So that report will be forthcoming. Once that's available, we can share it with members. And one of the things that's coming out here is PennDOT's placing a little higher emphasis on systemic safety improvements. Things like rumble strips, which you've seen, they're effective anywhere they're located. So you're not just following maybe a hot spot. Those are treatments that have pretty significant benefits, and their cost benefit ratios are very high. So they achieve a lot for a low cost. And so we might see things, more of those systemic projects occurring. Another thing is with the highway safety manual and some of the network screening that's done there. There's some more requirements. This is data driven, and so we have to make sure that we're addressing those areas where kind of the expected or actual crashes are exceeding what have been predicted, so that we're focusing on those areas. So those are some things to consider, as we move forward. More coordination with the district traffic safety units and with local officials to compile and analyze potential safety projects. Another factor is, within at least the District 3 region, most of the highway safety improvement program funds are still committed to the Route 54, 642 intersection safety project in Montour County. So as you're, working to develop candidates for the next tip, or hearing from your constituents, or, things are fed into the process here, that's a factor, at least within the District 3 area, and that the reality of this being very data driven, we have to show, significant crash safety benefits with any of the projects that are put forward to use these funds. And within this section here, we then show some bar charts for the actual fatalities since 2013 and actual serious injuries since 2013. And then what that 1 or 2% annual reduction in fatalities would mean for 2020 and 2021, and the level serious injuries. So if you kind of look at those, you see we were going, in the right direction with reducing the fatalities. That trend, a little bit of a slight outlier in 2015, but that trend line was moving in the right direction, and that hopefully we will, meet or exceed the 2% annual reduction targets with the activity going on with programming safety projects, with the other related educational enforcement and other safety plans that are being implemented in the region. In this section, then, we do also include on page 88 the actual letter from PennDOT, and then it includes a form letter response there for the MPO to note whether it's agreeing to plan and program projects that contribute to the statewide targets, or if they're going to deviate from that and try and set their own targets. And if they are, then they have to make sure they're getting information to PennDOT in a very timely fashion and justifying how they're establishing targets that are different than the 2% annual reduction in fatalities or the level serious injuries. And the final enclosure there is kind of essentially what we had in the first section, showing the actual numbers from 2015 to 2019, and then what the targets are for the 2017 to 2021 5-year period. And the footnote there being that the VMT, vehicle miles traveled, is estimated to be 5% higher per year starting in 2020. And we'll continue to see things as we track and evaluate what the impacts and implications of COVID have been and what we've kind of reporting on from other data sources we pulled there. So that was an attempt there to summarize the performance measures. And again, at a staff level, that we don't really have the technical capabilities to perform analysis needed to veer from the statewide targets. So we'd be looking for a motion, unless there are any comments or questions, to adopt the 2021 state target and then plan and program projects that contribute to meeting or making significant progress toward those.
So Steve, if we don't meet those levels going into 2021, can we blame it on COVID?
Probably not for that, but there'll be a full evaluation that PennDOT performs, as part of that. And essentially all the highway safety funds in our region are going towards safety projects. They're not really being flexed to other areas. And that's one of the main kind of requirements. If you're not meeting those targets, then you have to go to an earlier level of what the HSIP funding obligations were and make sure that you're putting the funds to the safety users and not detouring those into other areas or categories of funding. So, but that implementation report will then note, why progress hasn't been made and factors to consider for making sure that, they are met in the future.
So I'd like to build off of Greg said. This is Mark and Mifflin again. I kind of agree exactly with what Greg's saying. I know of two in particular of fatalities that happened in Mifflin County alone because they fixated on wearing their stupid mask in their car. Fire department responded to the crash, and that's why they said, they passed out and couldn't breathe. And so, there is some of that going on.
And honestly, there should also be some reduction in the travel because of the restrictions that have been put on people. But if the numbers go up, seriously, it's wondering how much of this is going to be related.
Yeah, that's hard to predict. Just in terms of exposure, if there's less people driving, there's going to be a little bit less opportunities for crashes and then serious injuries or fatalities. But I think maybe one of the things that was being hit was maybe some more aggressive driving or speeding as there's lower volumes, and that was maybe leading to some higher, more severe injuries. Maybe the fatalities were down, but it's hard as, guesses or extrapolations there. But until we get to a full accounting of the crash data and all the reporting that the police do, it's hard to predict how that's going to come out. But I think I had seen what Jim had shared, the Center County MPO presentation on this and their fatalities. They'll have to check into the data more, but they were down considerably, I guess, in the prior year. So there's outliers sometimes year to year, and that's why PennDOT looks at the 5-year rolling average. But hopefully we'll see, these targets being met. There's going to be things done, with vehicles that are going to, become more safe as those are more deployed. And so hopefully that'll drive down some of these numbers. And there's always a human element to these, and that is kind of the greatest element to most crashes with the risk factors. So, but we'll continue to make sure we're programming projects that are eligible and would have a great safety benefit.
Do you need a motion to adopt this?
Yes, we would look for a motion to adopt the statewide targets and to continue along with programming projects that meet those, and certainly if possible to exceed those targets.
Well, then I'll move in favor of adopting it. Greg Moulter Montour.
Second, Mark Calusi.
Thank you for the motion, Greg, and Mark Calusi, thank you for the second. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
It appears the ayes have it, but just in case, we'll put it out there for any nays. Same sign. Okay, hearing none, we will move forward with responding to PennDOT with that letter and ensure that that is submitted and well ahead of the requirement for providing that by February of next year. So thank you for that. And the more data comes in, more information, we'll share that. Usually it takes a couple months into the next year for the full reporting of the crashes. But when we get that news release or those updated publications from PennDOT, we'll share that with you and try and report back and try and distill a little bit what maybe the COVID situation impacts were. Thank you, everyone. So if there's nothing further, our next agenda item is the Active Transportation Committee update from Catherine. Thank you.
Sounds good. Just a quick update today, nothing in the packet for you to check out, but we had our most recent meeting this past Wednesday, and we are working on developing a funding workshop for the members to discuss with various groups where their projects will fit best for applying to grants. DCNR is opening for funding early in 2021, so we want to stay ahead of that and get some projects submitted for that information. So that'll be coming in either January or February if you are interested in that. In the work groups, we have a couple of items going on. The Connections work group is currently working to update our matrix of projects that was created when the Middle Susquehanna Bike Ped Plan was established. They are closing in on receiving all the sheets back, and we'll be compiling a fresh list of project updates, which will be available on the SEDA-COG website probably around about the end of the year. The safety work group is working on a road safety analysis that is still in the formation stage, but we'll use a variety of data to find sites where safety-related projects may prove helpful. And the community engagement and outreach work group is publicizing the availability of the stickers and decals that we discussed earlier. So lots of good stuff going on, and all of the work groups will be holding meetings in the next couple of months. Our next full committee meeting will be held on February 5th. And unless anybody has any questions, I think that is bulk of my update.
Okay, then hearing none, I'm going to jump in with item M, member forum. There's one major item we wanted to throw out before we open this up. We got an email earlier this week from PennDOT indicating that last Thursday, the P3 board had approved a P3 major bridge program. Our understanding is that this would allow PennDOT to use a P3 structure to collect tolls on large structures that are in a condition that warrants timely attention. This is part of the larger PennDOT Pathways effort aimed at filling the projected gap in transportation funding between what's actually needed to maintain the network and what we expect to have coming in over the coming decades. The documents came out just a little bit too late to be included in the packet for this meeting. So what we're proposing is that we'd send those letters out to you with the ticker later today. One of the things included in this, in the PennDOT Pathways portion, is a link to a survey and the ability to provide comment on what they're looking at. That survey is open through December 17th. So if this is something that, when you hear about this, you really support the idea of being able to implement a toll for the structure and have it collected right where the money is going to be used, we encourage you to log in and provide that feedback. And conversely, if this is something that just upsets you to no end and you don't want to see it implemented, we think it's worth your time to go through and provide that feedback. I think PennDOT's looking for a little bit of input from transportation decision makers in our community. With a very brief review of the survey, we just went out and took a quick look at it. It does look like they view it as an opportunity to provide some of the information that they've been working on that led them to this place. So you will have to work through some of that before you get to the opportunity to provide your comments. We encourage you to allow sufficient time for that. We expect that as staff, we're going to get more information about this at the Planning Partners webinar on Tuesday, but since the survey is only open through December 17th, we wanted to share what we have immediately. So look at that. Look for that as a follow-up coming out after this meeting. The regular items of interest listing starts on page 93 of your packet. And with those two highlights, at this time, we'd open it up to any members or meeting attendees that want to provide an update of what they've been doing in their area. All right, then hearing none, unless there's someone that wants to jump in here, we're going to take that as an indication that you're ready for us to adjourn the meeting. Okay, I'm seeing a couple of nods around the board, so we will consider the MPO meeting adjourned as of 11:03 a.m. Thank you for your participation and for your time this morning. And those of you from PennDOT, if you want to hang on for just a couple minutes so we can have a quick discussion about the strategy days, we would much appreciate that. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jim.
Hey, thanks.
Happy Thanksgiving.